In February of last year, I did a talk on my old channel about Christina Hoff Sommers. It's linked below. In it, I came down pretty hard on her for distorting statistics on poverty to make women look like the quote-unquote real victims. And I also criticized her for her well-documented history of promoting chivalry and male disposability. Even if you don't watch the video, it's worth a visit there to read the comments. A bunch of purple pill dudes lost their shit. The moaning and gnashing of teeth was verging on biblical. Apparently, when you're purple pill, gynocentrism is just peachy keen as long as you're based mom. The criticism of the video was fairly uniform. Christina Hoff Sommers is a supposed ally, even with some imperfections, and I shot myself and likely the men's movement in the foot by taking a swipe at one of the sacred cows of anti-feminism. At least that's the take when viewed through purple-colored glasses. I even got an email from Milo Yiannopoulos about it. He was spitting mad that I had insulted his mommy. As an aside, later, when he was subsequently trashed in a fit of media virtue signaling and forced out of Breitbart, I waited for Sommers to rise in public defense of her favorite son. Unsurprisingly, I waited in vain. Indeed, since the witch hunt against Milo went into high gear back in February, I've not seen her even mention his name anywhere. I decided to do a retrospective on this because, one, the comments on the video keep rolling in, largely with the same sentiments from the purple pill faction of the red pill movement, and two, because I think it's an object lesson valuable to anyone invested in the general well-being of men and boys. That said, I expect some downvotes on this talk, maybe quite a few of them. After all, Milo isn't alone. Sommers has a lot of fanboys who think she's above criticism, and they genuinely appear to think that at the very least Sommers is a net gain for men. Yeah, sure. A self-identified feminist who promotes male disposability, endorses the He for She campaign, and furthers ideological lies about men in poverty is a net gain for men. Some of those purple pills are so light that they look blue to me. With red pill women like this, who needs feminists? I could go over more of the details again, but I already did that in the first video. And the point here is not to simply bash Sommers for hawking gynocentric claptrap and feminist lies while making disingenuous appeals to an anti-feminist crowd. The point here is the same point I've been making online for nearly 10 years. It is to remind men whenever the opportunity arises that red pills don't exist where gynocentrism is allowed to go unchallenged. When I look back on all the thousands of men I've worked and communicated with over the years, gynocentrism was nearly always the number one cause of damage in their lives, whether getting shafted by gynocentric courts in a divorce, or being the subject of false allegations of harassment, sexual assault, or domestic violence. Gynocentrism is usually at the root and always in the way of correcting the problem. And it is a lot more than just those direct causes. Gynocentric socialization takes a huge toll. When men struggle against their own programming to defend themselves against women with personality disorders, when hoodwinked by gold diggers, or just being defenseless against the typical exercise of women's abusive control in relationships. The problems start and are difficult to resolve because of gynocentrism. Feminism isn't the cause of gynocentrism. It's just one form of it, and it's not even the main form or the most damaging, at least in my opinion. The traditional conservative plantation mentality in places like PragerU and the American Enterprise Institute compete vigorously with feminism in their gynocentric standards, and they are much more surreptitious about how they go about it. In between slickly produced videos debunking the wage gap and challenging idiotic concepts like cultural appropriation and rape culture, They serve up party trays full of shame sandwiches, telling men they are worthless if they don't get married, telling them to man up. Does the name Brad Wilcox ring a bell? I've linked to one of his videos below and my response to it. He's a perfect example of anti-feminism that hates men, but will tolerate them if they bow and worship women. Some of you may remember a video from Tammy Bruce from February of 2014 called Feminism 2.0. It was another humdinger of an ode to men on their knees. In it, she basically painted men as sex-obsessed ne'er-do-wells who are worthless without a woman. It's like, don't worry, guys. As long as a woman spits on a Kleenex and wipes your face clean, you'll do just fine in life. Now, tuck in your shirts and don't slouch. Prager, Wilcox, Bruce, Summers, and people like Kathy Young, all high profile in the growing red pill community, despite the fact that most of them identify as feminist, and all five demonstrate an ongoing contempt for men unless they think more of women than they do themselves. For fuck's sake, can anyone point me to any time that any of these people have ever even uttered the words men's rights? And yet, if you point any of this out, so-called red pillars wheel in the fainting couches and start swooning like UC Berkeley students who've been forced to wear a MAGA hat. These people, these ersatz heroes of the counterculture, are held in high regard by those who timidly dip their toes in the red pill pool and then strut around like they're Michael Phelps. They're the same people who think that all a woman must do to be safe for men is not have green hair and a face full of metal. Bernard Chapin comes to mind. He called Christina Hoff Sommers the greatest MRA ever, and he puts politics over the well-being of men every time. The same with Jordan Peterson, calling MGTOW losers and touting antiquated Jungian archetypes that put men in servile roles to anything with an antiquated archetype of a vagina. If you think that's red pill, be careful. You might just turn blue choking on it. I know, I'm pissing in a lot of Cheerios here, and for sure I'm not trying to set myself up as the guy with the answers. I'm just pointing out what I see, and that is, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. The new wave of talking heads on matters of gender are every bit as gynocentric as the people they are allegedly reacting to, and in the end, they are of little use to men getting bent over by a society that sees them in terms of what use they can be before they're used up. You will probably see some of their fans in the comments here going on about how we all need to stay together, how imperfect allies are better than no allies. And if these people were actually allies of any kind, they might have a point. But they aren't allies. They are just entertainers cresting a wave created by people who actually took red pills. As much as I know that everything I say is in fact only my opinion, that opinion nonetheless remains fixed on one idea. If you see gynocentrists as allies, you're about as red pill as a now convention. Failing to see that is a matter of simple delusion. The comments to the first video I did on Summers reflect a sadly unequal proportion of men who get what the problem is and men who don't. Regarding the men who don't, the irony they display is so hot it sizzles. Some of them appear to literally ride into the comments on white horses defending mommy from being insulted. It's as though in the absence of any willingness in their own lives to take a decisive stand, they will gratefully accept crumbs of support so questionable that it can only be expressed in scare quotes. And it's not that I don't appreciate the enemy of my enemy is my friend worldview. It's just that I don't think they have a clue about who or what the enemy really is. Eleanor Roosevelt is credited for saying, Great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. Small minds discuss people. It is a fantastic quote, and I'd like to borrow from it and offer my own red pill spin. Great minds discuss gynocentrism. Average minds discuss feminism. Small minds discuss women. This is why I'll continue to piss people off, especially those taking regular doses of the red pill placebo. And it is why I will never compete, if I must use that word, with the likes of those who rely on gynocentrism to gain mainstream appeal and acceptance. It's not that I don't see them as useful idiots in the battle. After all, there was a time I was a great admirer of Summers. I read her books, quoted her frequently, and even published her material on A Voice for Men. I suppose it was a necessary step in my own evolution, and to that end, I am sure that their myopic, soundbite-addled critiques of feminism serve as a gateway that will eventually lead some people into the grand corridors of this red pill kingdom. As for giving them a pass, though, I'm glad to say that's not my job. As I keep suggesting to men over the years, the only job I have here is to adhere to my own values and to act on my own beliefs, striving to care as little as possible who likes it in the process. And I know I'm not the only one. I see it here in the comments every day from men of all stripes doing the unthinkable, putting themselves and their own well-being ahead of what the world tries to shame them into doing for women. That is what the red pill has brought me. It's a gift I would not sell for any amount of money, much less for greater popularity on a social media platform as unreliable and corrupt as YouTube. And that is it for today's talk, but I do want to add a couple of footnotes here. I woke up yesterday to find about 30% of my entire video library had been demonetized straight out of the blue as advertiser unfriendly. I thought about it for a while and decided on my course of action. Fuck 'em. I'm not appealing any of the decisions, and I'm not monetizing any more videos. That way, I don't have to worry about it, and you don't have to put up with crappy commercials. If you want to support my work, there's a link below to my Patreon. For those interested, I have all my videos saved and have a plan of action when the time comes that YouTube pulls the plug on me. You'll be able to read about it on A Voice for Men when it happens. With that, I wish you all a good day and see you next time.